Hello everyone, welcome to Heavy Rotations. My name is Thom Jennings. I'm here with my son Trevor, and I believe this is episode 10.
This is.
Okay, so for episode 10, we did something special. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But last week, I believe you gave me an album, which
J.
was
Roddy Wolfson in the Business.
Okay, and if you haven't watched that, you should, because we clearly don't have enough views for it. And it was a good episode, I think.
Yeah, you didn't like you didn't like one of the songs, but
I did not like the song. I just didn't like the tracking, like where it was in the sequencing of the album.
But yet it was my favorite song. So
Yeah. So,
if you want to learn more about that.
So clearly we
watch
haven't
the
worked
episode.
through our issues from the last episode. So if you don't know what those issues are, it's a good time to watch it. So this week what happened is I gave Trevor an album. The group's name is the Ben Miller Band.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be talking about that album. And do you want me to do just a teeny teaser intro before we get into the other stuff?
Of the Week 10 stuff?
Of the Ben Millers, just teeny teaser.
Sure.
So, because we're going to be talking about this. So if you're watching for Ben Miller Band, this is actually this is a group that was referred to me or suggested to me. What do you call it? Is it suggested, referred?
Either one works, I guess.
Like recommended. Yeah, recommended to me by a guy named Jack Burris, who is known as John Jack Burris. So, and the real question is why is John shortened to Jack when John is 4 letters and Jack is 4 letters?
I guess it's not shortened then, is it?
But it doesn't make sense because like Thomas goes down to Tom, Trevor goes down to Trevor. Actually, Trevor
sometimes gets shortened to Trev, but not very often.
Yeah, not very often.
I haven't really been
Meredith?
using that.
Mare
works.
Yeah, Mare works.
Baxter, we got Bax.
Baxter the dog is Bax. But anyhow, John and Jack are the same amount of letters, so I don't know. Maybe it's
just another name. You can't call it a shortened version. It's just another name
just
for
another
it.
name, yes. So John Jack Burris, who we will call Jack for our purposes, because that's what we always call him, recommended this band. But we did, before we began to record this week, we went down to a place in Williamsville, a record store. Our first visit to a record store officially is part of the Heavy Rotations. What do we call this? Show? Yeah. YouTube vlog.
Mm-hmm.
Vlog.
And we wanted to do something special for the 10th episode, so we did, it was your idea to do the $10 challenge.
$10 challenge.
What that is.
So we had 10 minutes and $10 to pick out an album for the other person that the other person would like. And up to $10.
Yeah.
You didn't have to spend the whole $10.
You should spend less than $10. So you didn't want to get... The goal was basically not to get like a new album, which is normally like $20, $25, but to get something kind of vintage.
So we'll do a quick reveal on what albums we bought today for each other, and then maybe a couple other ones we'll talk about, and then we'll get into Ben Miller after that. So this is the big reveal, and then next week we'll give the whole reaction to the albums, whether we actually succeeded and who won the $10 challenge.
Yes, we haven't listened to these yet. We just picked them out. That's it.
Yes.
And we, right before filming this, so.
Filming. It's actually video. Film is no longer a thing.
Okay, you got to get specific here.
All right. So you go first. I think I see what album you bought me.
So I was perusing through the 70s section, and I stumbled upon this. It doesn't have a label. I actually don't know what it's called. I kind of just pulled it out and thought like, oh, this is something you would enjoy. I opened it up and I saw Todd Rundgren on there, which he is a fanboy to say the least of Todd Rundgren, and that is him right there. So Todd's not only on this album, but it's him and a bunch of other stars, or whatever you want to call them, including the Doobie Brothers. You got Emmylou Harris, John Sebastian. Mary Leon Russell. It's basically like I found it like the compilation section. So I knew that if it had Todd Rundgren on it, I would immediately get your attention, at least in the slightest way.
Yeah.
But then I also thought maybe it'd be kind of a cool compilation that you wouldn't figure out otherwise. But you did know what it was called. I don't know what it's called. But
let me see
here.
here.
To explain what it actually
is. So this is what's called loss leaders. So like I'm 54 years old. So anyhow, I think it was mid-70s this album came out. and pretty much any Warner Brothers albums that you bought in the mid 1970s. And if you pick them up at a used record store, you'll see on the jacket that they'll have this thing that says, for I think it was like $2 or $3. It was called Lost Leaders. So it was this album that was supposed to introduce you to all these different Warner Brothers artists that weren't making any money. And Todd was actually not on the Warner Brothers label. He was on Bearsville Records, but they were distributed by Warner Brothers. So I think that's how he made the cut. But yeah, a lot of these guys went on to have really, really important careers and everything. But this is kind of I don't know. This was just in a fan forum the other day for Todd Rundgren. People were talking about it, and I recently picked up a copy of. Well, we'll talk about that album as well, Skull and Roses by the Grateful Dead, and it had in the paper sleeve. It had the little order form where you could send away by mail, and they would mail you this record. Like, this wasn't even a record you bought in record stores. It was a mail order record. As I said, I want to say it was like $2 or $3, but I don't know. Maybe if we eventually get to the point where we do show notes, we'll put in show notes what the specifics were. But, if you're watching and you ever bought this because, you're around that age or whatever, let us know if you know more of the story than I know. But that's what I know. In the Todd Rundgren fan community, we're all familiar with this because it's, there's Todd right there. One of the most ridiculous pictures I've ever seen. It doesn't really look like him.
Yeah.
But,
and they list him as, or they talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. He is, too.
The super prolific Todd Rundgren strikes again with an LP called Faithful on Bearsville Records. Yeah, and I'd said Faithful is an interesting album because I was born in 1966 and Todd's career started in 1966, his music career. And so his album Faithful, the first side is all covers of songs from the year 1966. So I like that. I've done that on my Turntable Tuesday with Thom, which you can see on YouTube as well. So what did you find for me?
Well, you know what? We talked with Jack the other day about Tommy, and one of the scenes that we discussed was the famous baked bean scene. Now, I did a little bit more research after that, and this one, The Who Sell Out, has actually been kind of, getting a little more attention lately because they're coming out with a new edition of it. And if you go to the Who website, you'll see it. I think there's a box set with a whole bunch of extra tracks and things like that. But it's an interesting album. It's got a bunch of little commercial jingles interspersed with the songs. But the baked bean scene in Tommy was actually inspired by the baked beans picture here. And, on a personal level, I actually have a song called A Big Ass Can of Baked Beans. And this is indeed a big ass can of baked beans. That's even bigger than the big ass can of beans that we did the song about. But from a sentimental standpoint, we may have talked about it on the show with Jack. But when Trevor was, I want to say 14, he wanted to see the Who all of a sudden, and they were coming to Hamilton, Ontario. The tickets were $100 a piece, and I was like, I was a single dad. I really didn't have a lot of money. But
I got him drunk and he bought them.
Yeah.
True story.
It's a true story. It's a very true story.
Yep.
And so we bought the tickets and we wound up going to see the Who in Hamilton, Ontario. And that's a story for a whole nother episode. But still, the Who's a very important part of our family history. So enjoy that one. And I will take the Warner Brothers Lost Leaders. I'm interested to hear some of these bands that I've never heard of on here. Of course, I know the Todd Rundgren song well, but we'll go from there. All right, what do you got next?
I also just ended up grabbing a couple records while I was there. Kind of curious to see how this is. I got the Philadelphia Folk Festival. So the festival started in 1961, but this is from 1977. Not really familiar. This was kind of just it was just a few bucks. Figured I'd grab it and just kind of see how it is.
Nice.
And then I also grabbed a Flat and Scruggs album because I really love Flat and Scruggs, and this was only a couple bucks, and I'm really excited to listen to this. So that was just a couple of odd finds while I was there. I don't know what else.
Hi-Fi Hits again, Williamsville.
Yep.
We're gonna plug them. So the only reason I bought this is because the cover here is, and I actually posted this on social media. This is the Skull and Roses Grateful Dead artwork. I mean, it's definitely the exact same thing. There's no deviation from it.
Yeah.
I can't figure out what the heck the connection is.
Yeah, we were looking it up in the store. I looked up the artist
Yeah.
that was on there, and we looked up the other Student Skull and Roses, and just if you know the connection, let
Yeah,
us
we
know,
don't know,
because we
man.
kinda
This is
couldn't
really
figure it
weird.
out,
So
but
I
it's
paid $2
almost spot
basically
on.
for the cover because I don't
Yeah.
listen to classical music.
I think it's gonna be pretty good though. I was reading
Yeah.
the back. I think it's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a Grateful Dead connection or but yeah, this is it, and it's just crazy. So yeah, hopefully we'll figure out that mystery. But for $2, I literally well, they say you can't judge an album by its cover, but that's the only reason I bought this. This album, Henry Gross plugged me into something. This is a very fascinating story. So Jack, who was on 2 episodes ago or whatever.
Yeah, 2 episodes ago.
So Jack Howell, my brother-in-law, he texts me today at work. He says, I need you to do me a favor. I said, what's the favor? He says, well, just call me after work. So I call him. I'm literally en route to Hi-Fi Hits in Williamsville, New York, and he says, I'm looking for an album by Henry Gross. I can't find it here because he's a Georgia artist and they just don't have it in the stores. He gave me the name of the record and said, next time you go to a record store, look for it. And I said, oh, I just happened to be on the way to a record store or whatever. I get in there. They have it. It's the only Henry Gross record they have. And it's the one he's looking for. And it's in mint condition.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's perfect condition, too.
Yeah.
Doesn't even look like it was ever played.
I don't know anything about this guy. He's like a mid-'70s artist, I think. And I think Jack said he's out of Macon, Georgia.
That's a sweet cover, though. It
Yeah.
looks cool.
So I'll give it a listen before we pop it in the mail to Jack. But I thought that was a cool find as well. And that's it for me. I mean, I did buy a Jay Giles band album, but I don't seem to see that here. I must have left it upstairs.
I must have.
Unless you got it in your pile.
I do not.
All right. Well, that's upstairs somewhere. But we'll get to Ben Miller. And again, a little bit more background on this album. So Jack Burris is a good friend of mine. We share a love for a group called The Record Company, which at some point I'm going to share an album from them because I think you're really going to love those guys too. And Jack was just like really into Ben Miller. I think, and when you get to be my age, you forget stuff. I think he tried to convince me to go to a Ben Miller band show at some point, and I didn't. But I was intrigued by the band, and he had me listen to them like a Pandora station or something like that. So anyhow, I went out to Chicago, Illinois for a Todd Rundgren concert. And it was one of those deals where, there was literally only 20 people in the venue, but it was a full production thing and expensive ticket, $280, blah, 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 but whatever. I'm driving back from Chicago and I was like, man, I got to stop at a record store. So I stop at a record store in Toledo, Ohio, and I kind of perused. I wasn't really finding anything. And then I sort of ran across a Jerry Garcia solo album that I didn't have. There was a Todd Rundgren album that had like an insert that I didn't have, even though I already had 5 copies of the album. So I bought that one for a few bucks. And then I saw this Ben Miller Band album. And so I pull it out. I look, it's got pink vinyl. Mm-hmm. It was $10. And I was like, man, I think this is the album that Jack Burris was telling me about these guys. And so I called Jack. He didn't answer because he's a busy man. But I figured, heck, for $10, the album is pretty enough that I'll buy it. And worst case scenario, I hate it and I trade it in. So as it turned out, I really liked it. But as I listened to it, I was like, dang, man, I bet you Trevor would like this stuff. Because I know that, there's a certain, I don't know how to describe their sound. They're supposedly blues because Jack is really into the blues, but I don't really.
Some blues to them, but it's more like bluegrass Americana, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it's kind of like electrified bluegrass
Yeah.
Americana. It's not straight ahead like traditional Americana, and it's not traditional blues either.
Right. There's a lot of influence. So I was reading up on them. Apparently they met at like an open mic.
Oh, okay.
And kind of like. One of the guys was running the open mic. I think it's the lead singer. I could be wrong. I'll put a correction if I'm wrong. But they ran like an open mic together, and they all kind of created this band together. And they actually have like the lead guy plays like banjo, guitar, and a few other stringed instruments. And they have a wash tub player. He took like the strings from like a weed cutter.
Oh, no kidding.
And strung it up, and then somehow electrified it. And then their percussionist does like he has like this whole pedal set up. And he uses pedals and distortion for all of his like percussion. He uses like spoons and washboard and all this kind of stuff. So they're like a very unique band once I kind of dove into them. And they do a lot of unique things to create a very unique sound, and where they're influenced by, I kind of got the blues and then a lot of the bluegrass and a lot of the Americana. They kind of got their own thing going for them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on, but it doesn't necessarily sound busy.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that's important to note. So if you're going to check these guys out, and I remember reading that kind of their big break, I guess, was opening up for ZZ Top.
Yep.
Which, if you think about it, ZZ Top, that's got to be a pretty tough crowd to open up for.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
Yeah, like the Black Crowes, actually, one of their early breaks was opening up for ZZ Top. And they wound up getting into some trouble because ZZ Top was, they had like a commercial endorsement or something, and Black Crowes, were trying to be badasses or whatever. But these guys clearly took advantage of opening up for ZZ Top, and I could see where they would be compatible,
but different enough for like if I saw these guys open up for, I'd be like, wow, like they didn't just pick another like ZZ Top kind of band to open up, but they picked someone unique to kind of fit that vibe. Like they kind of got that distortion and kind of that blues going on that it would fit really well together, I think, on a bill.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to maybe some of the other discussions we've had about trying to find new music as you get older. Now you're significantly younger than I am. You're in your 20s still. I'm in my 50s. They say that like the sweet spot for discovery of new music is from like 16 to 22. Okay?
I can see that. That is definitely how I discover a lot of my music.
So I think if people look at their Spotify playlists, if they have such a thing, or maybe their album collection or whatever, you're probably going to find that's the era when you were 16 to 22, because you think of all the emotional changes and everything that you're going through at that time, and so the bands that you're introduced to during that era kind of have an advantage.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, Ben Miller Band, now getting to the point, is that they're trying to introduce themselves to an audience of ZZ Top fans who maybe came of age listening to music back when they were, back in the early 70s, because ZZ Top came of age around that time. But, like we talked about with The Who, when you were 14 years old, I was taking you to a Who concert,
sure. So
maybe some people that were going to ZZ Top concerts were going with their parents, and they get to discover a band like Ben Miller. And
yeah,
I don't know, man. I think one of the things that really has bothered me music-wise, even pre-COVID, was that so many of these classic rock bands go out with 4 or 5 other classic rock bands, and they don't bring somebody like the Ben Miller Band along to introduce to their audience and kind of give them a kickstart in their career. So it's kind of cool that they were able to at least take advantage of that opportunity to work with, somebody like ZZ Top.
Yeah, it looks like it worked out for them. You found out about them through somebody else, but I don't know how Jack found out about them, but maybe it was through kind of being a ZZ Top fan, or if he is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jack found him through like a blues playlist, because Jack's into some very eclectic blues players. This doesn't necessarily fall in the same kind of category of bands that I necessarily think of Jack listening to. And I do remember hearing some of their songs in the car and thinking, oh, they're really good. I think, I'm not trying to inflate my buddy Jack's ego, but he has really good taste in music. I feel like he's one of those guys that when you go for a car ride with him, you're going to hear stuff that you're not going to hear in somebody else's car.
But it's good stuff.
And it's good, and you might be able to find some stuff that you really enjoy. And it kind of goes to the theme of our show, being able to share music, old, new, whatever, but still being able to discover artists. And, if you think about it, even if we introduce 1 or 2 people to the Ben Miller Band, then we've done our job. You know what I mean? Clearly Baxter is impressed because,
I put him on for Baxter earlier, and he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
He didn't go in the other room at least.
Yeah. So what were your favorite songs on the album? And we had a couple misses. I gave you some other albums that you didn't really like. We've been struggling to find stuff that that resonated with you, but I mean, did this legitimately resonate with you?
Yeah, I really like the whole album, and like I said, I ended up reading all about them. This is definitely a band I think I could get really into, and I was really impressed with the vinyl color, but it even came with like there's a neat little booklet with it and everything. So like even the layout of the actual like vinyl I thought was really cool, and it was neat just to kind of read through the lyrics, like how they put everything together was fascinating. Their story is fascinating. Like this is definitely a band that I could see myself getting more into just based on putting it on and listening to it, and doing a little bit of reading about them. Like they have like such a very unique sound, and I love kind of the whole washboard, the multi-instrument. As a percussionist, I really want to next look up some live videos and see how he does some of the percussion stuff. It's very intriguing, and I liked it a lot. I mean, I liked the opener, The Outsider, got me right away. Yep. I didn't really have a favorite song. I really thought the whole record as itself played really well. I thought it was sequenced really well. Mm-hmm. There was a really fluid sound. Like it sounded like a full record rather than just like some ideas that they put together. But I think this wasn't like their first or their newest record. It's kind of mid. This is after they've had some stuff under their belt. So it felt like a very complete project. I really liked the whole thing.
Yeah,
I got no complaints at all.
I'm glad you talked about the sequencing too, because we talked about that last week, and I agree with you. I think that first song is just like I said last week. It punches you in the nose
and introduces you to the record. You're like, okay, this is what I'm in for. This is the sound they're introducing to me, and you're like, okay, cool, and they stick to it.
Right, and I think the biggest compliment that you can give to any album is not having 2 or 3 songs that are your favorites.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that if you take the record as a whole, like you look at a Beatles album, for example, like I'll say Sgt. Pepper, and there's a George Harrison song called Within Without You that I find somewhat unlistenable, but the rest of the album is just so perfect. It's hard to kind of pick any songs out that really stand out.
Yeah.
And I apologize to all you George Harrison fans out there. That song is just too much sitar. But Abbey Road, I think, might have been a better example, because I think that's an album that there's just not a bad moment on it. And you could say, it's a song here and there, but ultimately it's an album. And it's rare that a band that formed in the 2000s understands that and gets that. So I think that's pretty cool about these guys.
Yeah. And I think the whole idea of, being a record collector versus just kind of a listener is that you end up getting the album and listening to the album. And it makes you listen to the whole album.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I don't collect, I have some 45s, but I don't really collect singles. I collect full albums for what they are.
Yeah.
And this is definitely something I would collect because I think it's a great album.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, I guess we've pretty much covered everything, and then just a quick reminder of next week, for next week, I should say, we'll have that video from Hi-Fi Hits. You'll have listened to the Who Sell Out. I'll have listened to the Lost Leaders, and I might even have listened to the Henry Gross as well. We'll kind of get some impressions.
Maybe
who knows what's going on. Yeah, if you got any insight, please let us know. But as always, we love the comments. We got some guests coming up. Greg Juke, who has his own video program, sent us some stuff about a King Crimson album that we're going to be listening to.
We got a Zappa album to listen to.
We got a Zappa album.
Steve, who got a good mention in last week's episode.
Yeah, we got Steve, and Steve, we're just going to call him Steve.
That's it.
It's like, and he gave me some Triumvirate.
Oh, cool.
Which is, I've been doing a little look at they're like a German prog rock band, which if my German mother were still alive, she would love that. But anyhow, that's all we got for this week. Special thanks, of course, to Baxter, the dog, who
is our art director.
Our executive producer is fascinated with. So you'll be seeing plenty of Baxter in this episode, and our executive producer Meredith Snow. Yes. And Steve, of course, his last name is Hillebrand, by the way.
Oh, I thought we were just going to say Steve.
But people may want to look him up so they know who he is. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye, Baxter.